everyone. Welcome to the Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting kickoff. I thought, we definitely have enough quorum here. We have 13 people on the committee. I got 2, 4, 6, 8. No, I make 9. I know we have, Chris makes 10. And I know we have 3 people across the street at the select board, so I'm pretty excited if we can get everyone here. And we have Donnie Goris Cole, but am I getting that right, Donnie? Yep. I should know.
It's
from our consultant VHB is going to give us a presentation, but I was hoping we could do introductions. If everybody, we can do that whole go around the room. And I'll start. I'm Mark Silverberg. I'm chair of the planning board. I'm also chair of open space committee and a couple other committees that I'm on, but you can't hear me, Chris? Is that better? I am the planning board representation on the planning board representative on the master plan implementation committee. And Chris, since you were volunteering to go next, I will put you on the spot.
right. And as part of the introductions, I thought maybe we just quickly list your favorite thing about Westborough as part of sort of an icebreaker.
Who, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm also Chris. Chris Tucker. I've lived in town for 9 years. And excited to be on this committee. And my favorite thing about Westborough is the attitude of the people and the
Sure. Yeah, if there's anything you know about the master plan or any particular section of the master plan that you're interested in, if you could identify that just briefly.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I have young kids, so I'm interested just in the future of our town, and we don't have a home here, but we're planning on staying here. And so there's that. I'm in marketing, so some of the kind of elements within this are exciting to me. I'm sure with Wayfair. I lead a few teams there. I'm most interested in there are a few areas, but economic development and what opportunities may come to our town, will that also blogging, I would say, like what's that balance? So that to me is interesting.
My name is Hank Relish. I've been in Westborough. I came to Westborough because of its location. To be perfectly honest, you can't afford to.
I'm a business owner here in town. I'm really excited. I don't know if we have background to. I'm excited about what you believe, like how that will unfold.
I thank you for Veg Out. I go there whenever I go to the farm.
My interest in the committee.
I'm here living in Westborough. I really like Westborough. Also, really likes the small business. My strengths and expertise is
I'm Blair, been 11 years. I have 22.
Yeah, I was just hoping to hear what your interests in the master plan, if you have any particular interests.
Yeah, no, so I've always just worked, so it's always very busy. Back in college, I used to take courses. But now having the opportunity to do that. Very involved in every children. And I feel there's a lot of, Westborough is an interesting opportunity, trying to make it better, just fine tuning.
So,
And as far as my favorite, I really like the small.
so I guess I should answer the questions. I'll start. My favorite things about Westborough is a toss-up between Dairy Queen and Yeoman's. And I am interested in a lot of the master plan, but because I'm on planning board, I particularly concerned with the zoning aspect and what we can do on, on that piece, and the open space and recreation, because I'm on that committee, is extremely important to me, and I'm proud of what we've gotten accomplished there, but there's a lot of opportunities left in town that I'd like to see us, make some progress on. So other than that, yeah, I think those are the two big ones. So I'm going to turn it over to Donnie, and he's got a presentation as to what this committee will be about, and then we'll open it up to some questions, and we have a couple other agenda items. So, Donnie, go ahead.
All right.
So before Johnny begins, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Jim
Oh.
Robbins, and I'm the town planner. I have been for 30 years, so I've been here a long time. This is actually my third master plan here in Westborough. I've seen a lot of changes, as Chris and Hank can attest to. This town used to be a rural community. Lots of farms when I first came here. Subdivisions were developing rapidly. Now it's turned from subdivisions to a lot of commercial growth, which is a good thing for the tax base. But it's taken Westborough in a new direction. This is a rapidly developing edge community. I call it an edge community because we're on the edge of Worcester. We're an upper middle class and becoming an upper class community with a lot of the issues that upper class communities face. A little bit about Donnie. We have Donnie Koroscob here from VHB. We're very fortunate to have him. Donnie worked on the writing of this master plan that you've all probably seen online. And Donnie has written a couple award-winning master plans. As a matter of fact, nominated our master plan recently to the APA, which is the American Planners Association. Unfortunately, we did not win. We were close. But Donnie's other plan that he wrote did win. So we are very fortunate to have Donnie, who's a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, AICP. So when you see that at the end of his name, that's what it means. That's what planners strive to do. So take it away, Donnie. Thank
Donnie,
you.
one last thing, I'm sorry. Kristen Belanger is our administrative assistant. You should all get to know her because without her, nothing runs smoothly.
That's true.
And Hazel Nurse is the rock that this committee is built on. So you should all, she was vice chair of the Master Plan Advisory Committee, and she's also vice chair of the Planning Board. So you should all know Hazel. So anyway, Donnie, go ahead.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Jim, for the words. Mark, is there anybody that's not here that you want to
We have
recognize?
three people that aren't here. Christy Williams, the town manager, Patrick Welch, who's the select board representative, and Wendy Mickle, who is just a representative. So just so you know, I don't know if you're going to go into the makeup. We purposely tried to just leave it to at-large seats because we didn't want the same old people on this committee. We wanted some fresh ideas and fresh faces, and we have a good mixture of that, I think. So we only have 2 designated representatives. That's 1 planning board member, 1 select board member, and then the town manager, and everyone else is an at-large member. So if for some reason you can't continue to serve, we'll put that out, but hopefully everybody here will be in it for the long haul, because it could be a long haul.
All right. Thank you, Mark. So just in terms of the agenda, real quick, the next item on our agenda is just discussion of the committee purpose and function, as Mark mentioned. We want to just identify what my role is going to be. It's going to be a temporary role as we kick off and launch your work, and then you'll be sort of on autopilot at, the 5th meeting or so. Brief overview of the Westborough Master Plan. I think Jim mentioned it's online if you haven't seen it. I'll give you a brief overview of it today with some of the short-term actions and the high-priority actions, but definitely take a look at the plan, get familiar with it, because you're going to be breathing it, moving forward from month to month, and we'll talk about the frequency at which you gather. But it's going to be important to understand what the work went into that and what the general community's feelings were in terms of what it wanted for its future. I want to preview the implementation matrix and tracking tool. Now, this is something that's going to be part of your function, is to maintain and understand the status of some of the actions, because really one of the functions is to enable you to move these actions forward, working with the departments, working with other partners. And this tracking tool is going to list all of the actions that came out of the Westborough Master Plan with their priorities and their originally estimated timeline. So whether they're short-term, mid-term, long-term, and you're going to have to reevaluate that as you go along and in your conversations with the departments in terms of their capacity to implement some of these actions. and using that tool to provide comments and notes on the status of some of those actions, what the impediments were, the barriers, what opportunities are available. Say like the Infrastructure Investment Act came out and there's new money available that wasn't available during the preparation of the master plan itself. Now that could increase the timeline for some of the actions where you thought once thought funding wasn't available, now it's available, let's move that forward. And those are the conversations you're going to have as part of your committee. Then we want to have an election of the officers, a chairperson and a vice chairperson to really move the conversations forward, to maintain the conversation in the right direction, to make sure things are getting done, and confirm a meeting schedule and frequency, as I mentioned. All right. So at a very high level, the committee purpose is to advance the master plan's vision and goals that was developed with the community. And in the process, make sure that you're communicating with the community to keep them motivated and engaged in the master plan. So at a very high level, that's your overall purpose. And we could discuss that if you have any questions or concerns. In terms of specific roles and responsibilities and how that purpose is going to be achieved, you will work with the various towns and departments, boards, and committees. If you are not familiar with how a committee is run or the committees that are within Westborough and support the various operations of the town, you should get familiar with those because all of those different committees and all of those different boards are going to have a role in the implementation process, some more than others. That's true for the departments as well. You'll note that Jim's planning department is going to have a big role in many of these implementation measures, but then also the DPW. So you'll get familiar with those department heads and as you work to collaborate and communicate. But as you plan for the execution of the recommended actions of the master plan, you're going to want to identify and communicate priorities to the departments. You'll coordinate on implementation capacity, as I mentioned. Things are evolving, things change. So if something was identified as a short-term action, but just there's no capacity to handle that. So take, for example, the development of the master plan took place during COVID, right? So we had to pivot a little bit. The advisory committee was made up of largely department heads and board and committee members. So their time was legitimately, occupied by handling COVID and the town's response to COVID. So we had to pivot a little bit. Their capacity was reduced because of that. So we have to take their capacity under consideration when working through the implementation process. It would be helpful to the departments and the boards and the committees if you work to identify and communicate new funding opportunities. So if you think about something, if you have a particular interest, public health, public policy, and you recognize that the state has come out with a new funding or grant opportunity, and you're aware of that because of your work or your interest, or you have an interest in that and you seek that information out, that would be good to share, just because free money is good and it helps to get things done. Continuously adjust the implementation schedule based on roadblocks and opportunities. So the tracking matrix that I mentioned, and in mentioning that I mentioned that there could be some barriers that you have to identify along the way, making note of them. The point of that was to say that there could be some obstacles that are, find themselves, there could be some obstacles that you find along your way in communication with the boards, and whether that's the capacity issue or whether that's a funding issue or whether there's another issue that pops up, we want to identify those roadblocks and conversely the opportunities, whether they're funding opportunities or a new staff position is added that wasn't previously identified. A grant administrator, for example, if that's added. That's an opportunity that can be capitalized on. Exploring share case studies. So, each of these recommended actions are not necessarily unique to Westborough. The implementation will be unique, but, certain actions have been replicated and done elsewhere. So it would be helpful if you're in that particular interest area, how have other communities done this? And that might be helpful. What model ordinances can be obtained? What lessons learned? How much did certain projects cost? These things can be most informative and can be passed on to the people that are going to be ultimately responsible for making those actions reality. And then in some cases, leading action implementation. There may be, instances where an action, is something that you guys can take on yourselves. And I don't have an example in mind at the moment, but there could be some opportunities where you say, okay, we're going to pursue a certain type of plan, for example, and we're going to think about what we want that plan to include, and we're going to help develop that scope of work for that plan. That might be something that you take on, and you might be advised by folks like Jim and other folks in the different departments. You might want to take into consideration what has already been done as part of that. But my point is that there could be some actions that you take on yourselves, but definitely working closely with the planning board to make sure that responsibilities are clearly denoted, delineated, and departments and other implementation partners are on board. And as the tracking and implementation tracking matrix implies, you're going to be tracking the progress and reporting that to the select board, the planning board, and the community at large. And I'll give you a preview of that implementation matrix on some upcoming slides. But basically, that is a living document, as I've implied. You're going to continuously review it, review the status of the actions, adjust priorities, add notes, funding opportunities, roadblocks, things of that nature. We'll want to provide links to relevant documents like the case studies within that implementation matrix. And one of the key things that we have to identify is what sort of document repository the implementation committee can utilize on the Westborough servers to make things a little bit more consolidated and centralized in terms of, all right, well, look, we had this action and we've identified these case studies. This case study also related to this other action. So when you get to that other action, you know that other case study is there, just as an example, and you can easily access it. So a different kind of case study, what I just very briefly wanted to go over is how some other communities are conducting their implementation committees. So for this particular community, and am I going to pronounce this correctly? I'm sorry. Walpole?
Yes, Walpole.
Okay. It's been a little while since I've said that out loud. So just wanted to check on that. They established an implementation committee, and they have some charter and bylaws. They established their mission to be a steward, to steward the plan and ensure that the elements of the plan are properly addressed and to ensure that the goals and objectives of the plan come to fruition through current and future town activities. Their role, facilitate the balance and coordination between the various elements of the plan. And that's an important note as well. We have some high priority actions, and we'll discuss this a little bit more, but I would be remiss if I didn't make a point of this. You have 9 or 10 different chapters within the master plan, and each of them represent a different topic. So you don't want to I heard a lot of people say that they're interested in public health. You don't want to put all your buckets and, all of your eggs in that, that one bucket of public health and not get anything done in land use or economic development or housing. I know that it was brought up that housing is a concern as well. So we want to try to balance between the elements to make sure that it's a comprehensive master plan. Your efforts need to be comprehensive as well. But they balance their elements in order to ensure that Walpole develops a viable community that is environmentally, recreationally, educationally, and commercially well into the future. And I'm betting that they pulled that language from the vision statement. They had a certain number of members, and they had some representation from across the different local organizations. They used a task table, which is similar to the implementation matrix that I'm proposing. They had some progress logs. They request for updates to all the municipal, state, and private organizations that have implementation duties. Their master plan update will include references to implementation tools that were not available in 2004. So there are certain things, and this gets to the point of, during the development of their master plan and subsequent to the adoption and the creation of the implementation committee, there are certain regulations and funding opportunities and concepts and trends like low impact development and green infrastructure that just wasn't around or not, something that wasn't prevalent at the time they developed their master plan. So it's really key to keep, and you have wonderful resources that are plugged in with the town of, within town staff and the boards and committees that can help you with this. But it would be, key and imperative to keep tabs on these emerging issues and opportunities as you go through. And I stress this, and I stressed this before, and I'm stressing it now. But there's going to be things like sustainability, like climate change, like decarbonization wasn't around prior to 2021 for the most part. I'm exaggerating, but that's the data of the Westborough Master Plan. So we incorporated decarbonization and the Climate Action Plan in the Westborough Master Plan. But just using that as an example, that's going to be picking up steam. There's going to be a lot of funding available around that particular issue. And there's going to be a lot of new regulations involving, climate change. So that's really my point, is that we recognized in the master plan, it's going to be picking up steam. And, keeping track on things like that is going to be imperative. So I think that's the general concept. Take a look at the other slides for the different other communities. I don't want to spend too much time on this because they are, external to what you're doing, and we want to be focusing on your Westborough Master Plan and your charge and your thoughts and your concerns, and getting to that chairperson and vice chair. And I know that the planning board has a meeting in about a half an hour, so I want to be cognizant of that as well. But definitely take a look at these case studies and see if there's anything that rings, your alarms in your head and your light bulbs, and see if there's anything that you want to bring to the next meeting to say, this is what we want the charge to be, or this is what we want our role and responsibility to be. Any questions on that? All right. So VHB's role. So VHB, if you didn't catch, was the company that I work for. We helped develop with the advisory group the master plan back in 2020. Well, actually, it was 2018, 2019. 2020. Well, we were
Accepted at town meeting in 2020.
Well, yes, but we started way
2018.
2018, yes. We started in 2018. So it was a couple of year effort working with the advisory committee, including town staff and boards and committees, and the larger community in developing that master plan. For this particular role, like I said, it's a temporary role. I'm here to help you kick off the process, get the ground underneath your feet, advise on the implementation logistics, some of which I just went over, providing the tools to support the launch, which is the implementation matrix, helping you in guiding the conversation around the priorities and the short-term actions and how you might pick up that matrix, and what is the first thing that you're saying? What are the first conversations that you're having? That's what I'm here to help you with. How many have been part of a committee before? Okay, all right. So it might be helpful to have maybe a committee 101, how committees operate in Westborough. Sure. Would that be helpful? Just for everybody who's unfamiliar with the process, what a committee's role is, generally speaking. But in any case, here I'm here as part of today, helping you supporting just the general meetings in terms of the first 5 meetings, planning them, facilitating them, and then hopefully handing that off to the chairperson and the vice chairperson to do that facilitation, planning the agendas, what you're going to be discussing from meeting to meeting to meeting. And then helping you with early action items. So you have the high priority actions, you have the short-term actions. We're here to give you sort of the jumping off points for some of the ones that you want to move forward with first. So for example, the town of Northborough wanted to pursue a downtown master plan or a vision plan, because that was one of the things that came out of their master plan. So the committee had VHB help them develop a scope of work, help them provide examples of where it was done before, and help them come up with some, run-of-the-mill cost, order of magnitude cost for how much such a plan would cost. And they went forward and they issued the RFP, and they're about to proceed with their downtown master plan. So what your priorities are, we're here to provide some of that research and some of that, support, and running some of the legwork, and giving you the tools necessary to do that yourselves moving forward. So the planning process for the Westborough Master Plan was about 2 years, 2 or 3 years. We went and branded, if you were participated in the master planning process, thank you, then this might look familiar. We branded the 3 different phases of the plan. Westborough Reflects, which was exploring the issues and opportunities. What is your baseline? Westborough Explores, thinking about a vision for the future, looking 10 to 15 years into the future. Who do you want to be? What do you want to be? What do you want to represent? And then starting to identify and prioritizing those actions. And then Westborough Confirms. We pulled it all together, we confirmed it we presented it to the community, and we got their feedback, and we finalized it, and it went for adoption. There are a number of different elements or chapters of the master plan: land use, housing, economic development, natural and cultural and historic resources, open space, public facilities, transportation, sustainability and climate change, which was one of the first master plans to include that, public health as well, same case, one of the first master plans to include a dedicated chapter in Massachusetts, and then implementation. You're going to be primarily concerned with the implementation plan. That implementation plan is a long table with all of the actions, the priorities, the estimated timelines, the implementation responsibilities, primary and supporting, the related actions, which we'll get to in just a second. That's the chapter that you're primarily going to be concerned with, but you should familiarize yourself with how we got to the implementation chapter. All of those preceding chapters, those topic-based chapters, include a lot of background information. I think it was Lester who said that he's lived and worked and participated, Lester Hensley. And he's participated in a number of boards and committees, and he learned a lot about his own town by, participating in the master plan process. And, for those that are, living or have lived in Westborough for less than 5 years, maybe not 45 years, but you may, or even if you have lived here for 45 years, you may learn something new. But in any case, it's good context for how we arrived at those actions. I'm not going to read the full vision statement, but do please be familiar with it. But basically, the vision statement is boiled down into a couple of value statements. You want to be balanced, making sure that new development doesn't impede upon the other goals of the master plan, including the preservation of your scenic character and your open spaces. Connected. Transportation was a big, connected in this sense was the sense of community. A number of you mentioned that, feeling a sense of community, small town feel, having the social connections and capitalizing on those human and qualities to build those relationships and strengthen those connections. Desirable and accessible. So Jim, you talked about being an edge community next to Worcester. You're close to Boston as well. It's a very prime location, and it's well connected via the various roadways. Thriving. So that's focused on the economic activity, making sure that you're moving forward. Again, each of these value statements should be balanced and consistent with all the other value statements, but and particularly with respect to economic activity, moving forward, raising your economic value and your outputs, but doing so in a manner that is consistent with your overall goals. Multimodal. This is what I was referring to when I mentioned connected before. Making sure that you have efficient local and regional transportation networks. And those networks are, again, consistent with the other goals. And in this case, specifically referring to the sustainability and climate action goals. So, advancing the walkability, advancing the active transportation, advancing the public transportation, and doing so in a manner that, it can build other elements of the master plan, like the active recreation and using your trails network. Sustainable. So the policies and actions reflect your commitment that you've established as part of your climate action plan and working toward lessening your overall environmental impact. And that's from a municipal standpoint. So this building, for example, the fossil fuels that are being burned to support the building systems here, but then also largely in the community. So you have a large number, Jim mentioned the large commercial development. That's good for the economic outputs, but that's more square footage. So one of the things that was identified as part of the climate action plan was working with commercial developers and their tenants to, try to focus on energy efficiency. And like I said, even from then till now, it's not about reducing by a certain percentage. Now the talk is getting to net zero. So how do you get those buildings to net zero? And in doing so, you have to work with those building, landlords and the occupants. And a lot of pathways and actions were identified through the climate action plan and through the master plan in order to get to that and other related sustainability goals. And from a governmental and accountability standpoint, you want to be trusted. So the town government provides innovative and high quality municipal and educational services, but you do so in a manner that is consistent with the strategic mission. Now there's this mission document, and maybe we could share that as well. I don't think that's properly laid out in the master plan, but it might be a good context for this committee to see. But it lays out the government's strategic mission and values. Any question on the vision statement? Okay. So the short-term actions. What are we expecting to do in the next 5 years? So we laid out a certain number of time frames. I believe there were 1 to 5 years or 0 to 5 years for short-term, 5 to 10 years for the midterm, and then beyond 10 years was a long-term action. Now again, some things may be moved. This is meant to be flexible. This was developed within a certain amount of time frame. And I should back up and I should say that the implementation plan went through a lot of internal buy-in. So we went back to the different departments, went back to the different boards and committees and said, do these time frames look about right? But that was their response at that particular moment. So new things come on board, come online, new issues arise. So we always have to have those conversations to say, is this still a short-term action? Can it still be done? But I wanted to list a couple of short-term actions just as an example to whet your appetite, give you a sense of what was in the master plan. So generally speaking, looking at a third party to revise the town's zoning bylaws for consistency and clarity, there was a lot of confounding and complex language in the zoning when we looked at it. And I think that the general consensus of the planning board and the overall committee said, let's just take a look at it. A zoning document is typically incrementally updated. And sometimes, some things don't exactly work well with other sections of the document. So just taking a look at the zoning bylaws and just saying, okay, well, are there opportunities for clarity? Are there opportunities to clean this up? Make it a little bit more, user-friendly and understandable, because it's really the developers, the residents that are looking to, make some adjustments, that are trying to pick this up and understand it. So clarity is always going to be helpful. Designing guidelines for the redevelopment of existing residential properties, expanding knowledge of local resources and permitting and zoning processes, updating the town's historic preservation plan that was released in 2002. I heard somebody mention that they were interested in the cultural aspects of the town. That goes hand in hand with the historic aspects. So what do you need to preserve and how are you going to preserve it? Pursue passive recreational opportunities. Explore opportunities for solar development, and that goes along with the climate action plan. What municipal buildings can support rooftop solar PV? What parking lots can support solar PV canopies? Really doing a solar PV analysis to understand where your opportunities are in town. Certain rooftops may not be able to support solar PV. You want to make sure that the economies of scale are there, that if there's not enough rooftop area to make a project economical or economically viable, then maybe that's not something you want to pursue, but maybe some other building has a lot of footprint. Maybe there's another area. Maybe it's not a parking lot. Maybe it's an open space. Maybe it's a former landfill. Not an example for Westborough, but from other communities, they've done that as well. Prepare a sustainable transportation plan that thinks about next steps for projects, programs, and policies related to the town's transportation system. Variances, consider them for allowing older residents to age in place, such as with in-law units or smaller dwellings on the same property. So accessory dwelling units for family or non-family, thinking about that and how that is already built into the zoning and allowed by the current zoning, or if it's not, and what changes can be made to as appropriate to allow them. And one of those issues that popped up was, affordability. And affordability is a concern for, young professionals and older individuals. And then, just generally low-income demographics that traverse age cohorts. But it's seniors that are, disproportionately affected because of their limited income. So how do you enable them to stay in a town that they spent, multiple decades in, and they want to stay in the town, but they can no longer either maintain their home because it's too big, or it doesn't fit their current lifestyle, but they still want to be here. They want to downsize. But downsizing is not an option. One, because maybe the housing options are unavailable, and that's where you can bring in accessory dwelling units as an example. What can you do outside of that with respect to potentially allowing room rentals where, maybe a student can live within a building that is occupied by a senior, and that person can offset the cost for ongoing costs for the maintenance of that. Thinking about those types of issues and related variances, but taking a look at the zoning and what you need to do in terms of what that variance might look like. So you have the short-term actions, and then you have the high priority actions. So what were the identified high priority actions? And we define this primarily as what is critical for the town to implement in order to be successful, and then what is highly desirable by the community. So we took this to the community and we said, okay, well, what are your priority actions? And we said, what do you absolutely need, and what do you really, 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 really want? And then everything else is sort of a nice to have. And what we came back with was, a number of different high priority actions across the elements. Several of them are listed here on this slide. But thinking about an adaptive reuse policy is one of them. You have vacant properties. Thinking about the conversion of them, into a need that or a land use that is really in need, that the community is in need of, living and working, hospitality, for example. Provide for the creation and preservation of affordable housing units in Westborough for the benefit of low and moderate income households. So that's a general one that's not too specific, but you want to advance, and identify opportunities to advance those affordable housing units within Westborough. Promoting mixed-use development in around the Bay State Commons and other shopping centers through land use zoning and development initiatives, and that gets to a lot of overall objectives of the master plan. So one, you're creating varying housing development types, right, within a mixed-use environment. Two, you're creating walkable communities because you're connecting housing with shopping and destinations. And three, you're compacting your development. So you're reducing transportation, limiting the need for folks to get in and out of their cars. They may work in the same area that they live in. They may shop in the same area that they live in. So you're reducing those vehicle miles traveled. Continuing to take advantage of the Historical Commission matching grant programs to support the preservation of Westborough's properties, landscape sites that are listed in the state's Register of Historic Places. That was one that was listed as a high priority. Now, this is something that I do want to make mention of, because there are certain actions that are going to be discrete. You do it, you check the box that it's done, and there are going to be other actions that require continuous engagement. And this is one of them. And other related funding opportunities and discovering funding opportunities to achieve goals within a certain element is going to be another area that you're going to be interested in and continuously engaged in. So you might want to set up a schedule. Okay, we looked at this on a certain quarter of the year of one particular year. Let's take another look at it on a biannual basis. So look at it 6 months from now. Look at it a year from now. So you'll want to determine what those actions are, and we could help you with that, and make sure that you're advancing them on a regular schedule. And then, adding bike facilities to existing roadways to increase safe bike travel options. I'll add to this, and I believe we added the EV charging stations within the master plan as well. And this is one of those areas that is, just blowing up, right? EV manufacturers can't keep enough stock to sell to people because they're so interested in new electric vehicles. The state just upped their incentives from $2,500 to $3,500. The government is maintaining their $7,500 and removing the cap on a per company basis. They're releasing each state has released a EV deployment plan focused on level 3 charging. They're estimating that, with an increase in adoption, we're not going to have enough EV charging stations as planned. So making sure that you are accommodating them, you're understanding where, the need is, multifamily housing developments that don't have, access to a garage and a charging station, shopping centers, places of work, working with, the developers and the local and major employers. I'm not going to dwell too much on it. It's one of my personal passions, but definitely one of those things that I think is going to be a high priority, only because that's where the trend line is going. Any questions on the short-term or high-priority actions? And again, those were just examples. They're not a comprehensive list. Okay. So the implementation matrix and tracking tool turns that implementation chapter into a workable living document. It's based on Excel. We try not to complicate things too much. Everything, and it's probably not as easy to see. Actually, it's very much blurred on that projector and overhead. But everything you see is from that master plan chapter. So you're looking at the element, that chapter, that topic that it concerns, the related goal that it helps achieve, the action number as it's identified in the master plan. And I'm going column by column, by the way. Column D, action description. What is the action? What is the intent? I have a column here on related elements, and really, the point of that is to say, this particular action doesn't only have an impact in land use, or it doesn't only have an impact on housing. I think I mentioned a few actions tonight and a few examples of how certain actions can impact different areas. So really, you're taking a systems thinking approach, right? You're saying, okay, well, I have my focus is on EV charging stations, right? But it also, the transition to EV charging stations is, it helps local air quality, right? Because it's removing the vehicles off the road. So we have to consider things like, okay, well, where do we want to place these EV charging stations to have maximum effect and impact on air quality? You want to make sure that areas of low income, of high trafficked areas are going to be benefiting from that EV charging station because you're going to be moving more of those toward EVs, for example. So that's just an example of, one action having a related action, and you want to be cognizant of that and, raising those opportunities and making some adjustments to the implementation plan based on those considerations. So that column E, is the related elements. It'll point you in the directions, okay, well, this particular action is related to land use, but it also has an impact on housing, economic development, and public facilities and services. We have implementation leadership and partners. So we identify a town department, board, or committee that is going to be the group responsible for implementation. Really, they have the capacity in terms of the know-how, the skills, the connections, the tools to make this particular action work and take it into reality. And then there's also the partners. So there's partners that could play a role in helping the primary implementer in actualizing making the action into reality, like I said. So, for example, there may be, Sustainable Westborough. They may be an implementation partner on a lot of these different actions because they have a special perspective on, on climate change, on sustainability, and that may impact a lot of the different, and the way that a lot of the different actions are implemented. You can implement a particular action in a very focused manner, or you can try to maximize the opportunities and the relationships. And sustainability is one of those areas where there's a lot of undiscovered relationships. So that just being an example, Sustainable Westborough as an implementation partner to an implementation leader who's going to be responsible for action implementation. We do have a order of magnitude cost estimate. This will have to be refined as part of your work in consultation with the different departments and the boards, but we give you a general sense of how much an action is going to cost the town. You know, we do this with $1 sign, $2 signs, $3 signs. That's the symbology, and it represents a certain range of cost. So you want to take that into consideration, and in terms of your priority setting, in terms of your action scheduling. The time frame, this is coming out of the master plan. Again, this is something that needs to be flexible in terms of that capacity. And then priority is the last column that we filled out as part of that implementation chapter. And again, we took that from feedback that we got from the community, and all of that was confirmed by the advisory group. The remaining columns were added as part of this, and it's really implementation status. Is it done? Is it delayed? Is it in progress? Has it not been started? Are we flagging it for any particular reason? What is the start date? What is the estimated completion date? What is the last status update? What are your notes? So this could be fleshed out a little bit more based on what we talked about tonight. But generally speaking, this is the implementation matrix that you want to make sure that you're keeping your documents on, because it's my understanding, I mean, you'll be engaged for quite some time, but there'll be some rotation, no doubt, as many committees, go through. You want future members of the committee to be able to pick this up and understand what you've done and the progress you've made. It would also help the future master plan update whenever that takes place, or updates to other planning documents, because that could be informative of, okay, well, now Westborough has undergone these particular actions, has implemented and made such progress. And you can, eliminate it and be more efficient in the development of those plans because of this work. But it also serves as your go-to in reporting to the select board and reporting to the planning board and the larger community. You can easily filter this implementation matrix to say, okay, well, what have we completed? What's in progress? What are the issues that we've encountered? So this is going to be your critical tool moving forward. And, we'll go a little bit more into detail as we work through it during the next meeting. And I realize I went a little bit over, so my apologies, but the election of officers I know is an important.
Before we do that, I just wanted to introduce a couple people that came in after that are members of the committee. Daniel Schur, just wave. We won't do like a whole who I am and stuff, but Patrick Welch, who's a select board representative, Christy Williams, who's our town manager, and Wendy Mickle, who is also our town clerk, but she's an at-large member, and long-time employee of the town. So we do have to do, really only making 2 decisions and 2 votes tonight. And I know that everyone, probably wants to jump in with both feet and start making changes and everything else. But I think probably the best thing we can do, I know Patrick has read the whole thing, but it's 683 pages, so I don't expect you all to read it, but take a look at the implementation matrix. That is really a good summary for everyone, and if there's a chapter that particularly interests you, you can read that. I think the committee, my feeling is the committee is going to decide how hands-on we want to get as we go, and once we get into it, we may say, oh, well, the planning board's going to write the zoning, but we're going to just push them to do that, or maybe we'll actually have a more active role. I think we'll determine that as we go. If you look at the other towns, each of those towns had a little bit different idea of what the implementation committee's role was, and so I think we as a group are going to determine that as we go. Hope that makes sense. We do have to elect officers, and we do have to decide on a meeting date. I don't know if anyone has any ideas for that? I know we did do a survey on the meeting date. You guys are all quiet. You're all like blank faces. Well, the survey, I think, was pretty overwhelmingly Monday night. Was a clear winner, like 7 o'clock or later.
Mark, is that?
No, yeah, I think pretty clearly it was 7 o'clock or later was the winner. You know, I certainly want to.
Every week or every other?
Well, again, that's something we're going to have to decide, and I don't want to be the guy telling you what to do because the committee has to make a group decision on that. But my feeling is, personally, that we would meet twice a month for 3 to 6 months and then go down to once a month. Yeah, I don't expect everybody 100% attendance in every, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm going to miss a meeting or two here or there. I mean, it's
You do need the quorum, right?
we have 15 members, right? So we need 8 for quorum, and I'm pretty sure we'll be able to get 8 on a regular basis.
You want to suggest?
Sure, Hank.
First and third Monday of every month for the next 6 months. At 7 p.m.
Sure. I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking. I would like, one of the reasons I want to alternate first and third is because the planning board is second and fourth week, and I'm hoping we get some administrative assistance that night. No, we're first and third. Can we do second and fourth? Hey, I want to do second and fourth only because I'm hoping that Kristen will be able to attend the meetings and take minutes and stuff, and I don't want to make her stay late 2 nights a week.
Now, that would be, then she would have to stay 2 nights late if it's the second
No,
and
no,
fourth.
our meetings are the first and third.
Our meeting's the first and third.
Yeah, I made that same
Sorry.
mistake, sorry.
Second and fourth.
Yeah, I know that means, not everybody will be able to make that, but I can't imagine how we would come up with a night that would be convenient for 15 people. I feel like some people are going to have trouble with the final resolution. So I will make a motion that we meet on the second and fourth Monday of every month for the next 6 months at 7 p.m. Okay, Dan seconded. Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Just keep your hands up, so, okay. All right, all those opposed? All right, I think that's 15-0. Did you? Yeah, all right. All right, what else? We have to determine officers. I think we need a chairperson and a vice chair in case the chairperson can't attend. Anybody have any thoughts? Colin, go ahead. Tom.
Or is it all just one large group?
Yeah, so Tom, I think, that's a good question, but I think it's probably more a discussion we'll have at our first meeting. My feeling is we're all going to have passions, and we may want to take something from the implementation and assign it to 2 or 3 people to kind of focus on and report back to the committee. So, if your focus is on sustainability, you might be communicating with Sustainable Westborough, communicating with the select board, whatever action in that matrix you're focused on, maybe 2 or 3 people would kind of take the ball and run with that. But as a group, we're going to get back together and and decide on what what the next steps are. Does that make sense? As far as the chairperson's responsibilities, I mean, this is kind of a new thing for me, so I'm going to say that they're going to run the meetings, set the agendas, make sure that things run smoothly. I don't think they're necessarily going to take on that much more than any individual member, but I thought that when I got appointed to this, and I was wrong. So, I don't know.
Mark?
Donnie, do you have a thought on that?
Well, I thought since most folks are new to the committee format, maybe it might be helpful to just send out a description of typically what a chairperson and a vice chairperson, what their responsibilities are.
Sure. Yeah, we don't even have to vote it tonight, right?
No, I don't think so.
We could vote it at our first meeting.
Yeah, so you might want to take it back home and consider it and review the roles and responsibilities and or volunteer somebody else for a nomination.
Anybody want to volunteer? I mean, I'm willing to do it, but I don't want to. Wendy? Okay, well, I'm going to nominate Wendy Mickle for vice chair because I think she'd be great. Anybody want to second that? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Wendy is our vice chair. Great. Anybody interested in the chairperson? All right, guys. All right, any discussion on that? All those in favor? All right, great. That's, I think, unanimous. All those opposed, they should ask. Wendy seconded. All right. So, Patrick, question. Do we need to set a term? I don't think we need to set a term. We can. Do you mean for the chair or for the members? Oh, I think the chair should be, re-voted yearly. I don't know.
All these details you can work on.
Yeah, absolutely, Hank.
So I set the date for the next meeting.
Yeah, that's really what I'm focused on. So,
First and third will be the 21st.
right. The question is, it's going to be the second and fourth Monday, but the question is, do we want to try and meet before? Well, yeah. So we can meet 28th. Donnie's available.
I'll have to double check that.
Yeah, that
I
is
think
the Monday after Thanksgiving. So, I mean, I'm fine with that, but we can wait till December if anybody, but then we run into Christmas. So, why don't we try and meet on the 28th? We'll put it out there, and Kristen will get us a location. It may not be this room. I'm not sure what's available yet. Okay. All right. Questions? I know this was a lot, and for all of us, it's kind of a new process. Well, except for Chris, she was on the last one. So I know Jim probably had some comments before we go, but I'm pretty excited. I feel like we're going to be the straw that stirs the drink in this town, and we're going to get something accomplished and take everything, maybe not everything at once. Believe me, I'm impatient on everything, but I feel like we're going to take some of these priorities and goals that were set out by the town over the last 2 to 3 years and actually get something accomplished and point everybody in the right direction. And that's kind of our goal. That's what I think we should be doing. So, questions before we go? We do have a planning board meeting after this, so I don't want to keep everybody too long.
If I could, Mark.
Yeah.
I suggest that if you haven't already reviewed the master plan, that you do so by starting with the implementation matrix, because that is what we'll be looking at to get started. and to identify your interest if we break into small groups. As you read the implementation matrix, as Donnie mentioned earlier, you'll find that you might be interested in depth in one of the chapters. So that would refer you to something, maybe you're interested in housing, or maybe you're interested in land use, et cetera. The implementation matrix will probably pique your interest to read one of the chapters more in depth, and then come prepared at our first meeting, which I believe is now going to be the 28th of November.
Right.
And you can find my email address online in the planning department. If you have any questions, please call or email me anytime. And I'm going to put Mark's name out there too. You can reach out to Mark or any member of the planning board, because all the members of the planning board served on the Master Plan Advisory Committee. So we're happy to help you understand what the master plan is and help you define your interest and understand the matrix. Any questions are good questions.
Patrick. So you had two questions. Well, one I think was more a comment, but yeah, and I understand your point there. The first one is, yes, we will be updating the implementation matrix, but that's, I think, going to be our job as a committee to say this is done already, this is in progress, the way Donnie had put out. So, for example, this CP, Community Preservation Act, was a goal in the master plan. We can check that one off. So that's something we'll do as a committee as we get further organized. I think what we all have to remember, though, is, our own personal biases. We have to maybe put those aside a little bit, because the master plan is really what our guidance should be, because this is what the town wanted, and we're trying to promote the master plan, not our own personal bias, if that makes sense to everyone. I don't expect us all, I have personal bias and I will be influenced, but yeah.
I was just hoping.
Okay.
As far as the other piece, decision making process, low priority.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's going to be some decision-making on the part of this committee as to what we're going to tackle first, and try and set realistic goals and not tackle everything in the, like you said, there's over 200 goals. We can't tackle them all in the first year. We have to identify a few that we can realistically do. What else? Anything else before we go? Jack?
Where can we?
What's the website, Westborough Master Plan?
Are you referring to the Excel document or the, we haven't distributed that just yet. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of cleaning up to do for that before we hand it out, but you will be playing with it during the next meeting. Yeah. The implementation matrix, well, let's delineate. So the implementation matrix versus the implementation tracking matrix, and we can call it something else to eliminate any confusion. But the tracking matrix is that Excel document, and we'll just call the other one the implementation chapter. Is in the master plan, to be
Yeah,
clear.
so the master plan is available on the town website, and the matrix is in there, but we'll have access to a tracking document in Excel where we can check off what's done, who's working on what, progress, updates, that kind of thing. So that hasn't been distributed yet.
The simplest thing to do is just go to the town website and click on the planning department, and the menu on the left-hand side of the planning department's page has a link to the master plan, and then you can scroll to the implementation matrix.
Thank you guys for coming in. I will make a motion
Adjourn.
to adjourn the master plan implementation committee meeting. I heard Chris second. Any discussion? All those in favor? I think that's unanimous. Thank you, guys. We'll see you on the 28th.
Use that. I think that's very helpful. Just kind of get a flavor. So it was good.
There's,
Oh, well, you can have mine.
here, you can make mine.
Here.
Oh, take his. She's not on it.
She's not on the committee. Yeah, mine. Yeah, that's very helpful. Yeah.
Did everyone,
Oh.
tell everyone that that last meeting was recorded, so that hopefully will not.
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear.
I said I forgot to tell everyone that they were being recorded at that last meeting, so I'll do that at this one.
So you do it now.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the November 15th meeting of the Westborough Planning Board. We have a full agenda. I will remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. We had, at 6 o'clock, we had a Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting kickoff. It's after 7 o'clock, so we have a preliminary subdivision plan for 48 Flanders Road on the agenda, continuation of the public hearing for 180, 182 Turnpike Road site plan application, continuation of the public hearing for the 190, 212 Oak Street site plan application, and an update on Village Commons. A couple of these we can go through quickly. We had a request for continuance on 48 Flanders Road. Is that right, or did we already continue
So
that?
that was a preliminary plan that was put on the agenda, but they're not going to present tonight. They'll be presenting on December 6th.
Okay, so we don't need a request for continuance on that.
Correct.
All right.
There's no business there.
All right, so they'll be on our next agenda, but we're not going to hear them tonight. We did have a request for a continuance from 180, 182 Turnpike Road. I will read that into the record. Stated November 14th, 2022, addressed to the Planning Board of the Town of Westborough regarding 180, 182 Turnpike Road site plan review. The members of the Planning Board, we are scheduled for a continuation of the public hearing for a site plan review application on November 15th, 2022 for 180, 182 Turnpike Road. At the last Planning Board meeting on October 25th, we were asked to respond to a letter presented by Walker Meadows' attorney. We were also asked to consider additional compromises to issues that might affect Walker Meadow. We were also told that the peer review letter from the town's engineering consulting firm was expected very soon, and we hoped we would be able to respond and resolve any engineering issues prior to the next public hearing. We have still not received the letter from Ty and Bond, and therefore we are unable to make progress on resolution of any engineering matters. The town engineer has assured us that she is expecting a Ty and Bond response on November 15th and will send us a copy of its report. We expect that all these issues could be handled at one last public hearing, but it is obviously impossible to have the resolution by November 15th. As a result of the time needed to properly respond to all the matters stated above, my client is requesting that the November 15th hearing be continued until the next meeting of the Planning Board, currently scheduled for December 6th, 2022. Anticipating this matter may require one final public hearing date after December 6th to finalize a written decision. I respectfully grant the Planning Board additional time as needed through December 20th, 2022 for any required public hearing to finalize this matter. Very truly yours, Marshall A. Gould, attorney for the applicant.
Mark, could I just ask a question, clarification of Jim on this? He asked that they respectfully grant the Planning Board additional time as needed. We're not required to make a decision by December 20th, are we?
Depends on what happens on the 6th. If everything is completed in terms of the questions and the issues, and there's no additional information needed, you might decide to grant the permit at the next meeting. However, if you still need additional information that you don't feel can be completed at the next meeting, then it may extend.
Okay, so the way he phrased this, it just made me a little nervous in the fact that there was some deadline that we would have to meet. Because my feeling was...
So the applicant has not informed me that there's a hard deadline.
Okay.
But I know that they wish to be done by the end of the year, so they're still hoping for that.
Yeah, no, I realize, but I just wanted to make it clear that, we were not under any deadline at this point, and there may be new information which needs to come in that we may decide upon, or information would come in from the applicant or other people. So I just wanted to make that clear that December 20th isn't a drop-dead date by which we have to make a decision.
Correct. December 20th is not a deadline.
Thank you.
It's not like there's a time deadline that's going to toll on that date. But the board should always understand that when all the information has been introduced and there's closure on all the issues, you should move as quickly as possible to render a decision.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have that letter on the record. Do we have a motion?
I move that the Planning Board continue the public hearing for site plan review application of 180-182 Turnpike Road to Tuesday, December 6, 2022 at 6:30 as requested by the applicant.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's 4-0 in favor. Jim, can I ask you, Pete's not here. Does he have to do a Mullen
If there's no information introduced, no.
Okay.
Yeah,
He only has to
if we
do it.
took information tonight, he definitely would need to.
Okay, so that's fine. He doesn't have to, we
Correct.
don't have to worry about that. All right, good. All right, we also have a request for a continuation of the public hearing for 190-212 Oak Street site plan application. I will also read that into the record. It's thankfully more brief. November 15th, 2022, addressed to the town planner, Jim Robbins. Jim, we hereby request continuance of the public hearing on Hana Place scheduled for tonight to the next planning board meeting. And that's signed Farouk Ansari, who is the applicant. Any questions on that? Okay, somebody want to make that motion?
I move that the planning board continue the public hearing for the site plan review application for 190-212 Oak Street to Tuesday, December 6, 2022 at 6:30 as requested by the applicant.
Any discussion? All those in favor? And that's 4-0 in favor of granting that continuance. So the last item on the agenda is update on Village Commons, and I'm going to start with Jim to give us just a general update on where we're at.
Sure.
Maybe get comments from Lisa, and then Farouk, if you have any comments, we'll turn to you. Okay. Jim.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. At our last meeting, you know that we discussed a couple things. First of all, we wanted to have an update of the project security bond for Village Commons and a discussion of any outstanding items. At the last meeting, we also wanted to have these items because there is one occupancy permit for the last residential unit, unit number 14, that still has not been granted. The board wanted that information that I mentioned earlier, the construction schedule and the security value, to make their decision of whether there was enough financial security for the board to grant that last occupancy permit. You wanted to make sure that there was enough money to complete any outstanding items associated with the residential portion of the project. We did receive a bond estimate from the town engineer, and Lisa Elaine is here this evening if you have any questions on that. Right now, for the items that remain outstanding, there is adequate security to cover the items that would need to be completed. We had also asked the developer to provide a project completion schedule, which he did provide to us late last evening, and I'm hoping that you've had an opportunity to look at that. I have some questions about these items and the status that is presented by the applicant when we get to that. Also, at the last meeting, we discussed options for the possibility of transferring the density from 190 to 212 Oak Street to this site under the transit-oriented village zoning, with the sending parcel being the parcel I just noted on Oak Street, in exchange for a density bonus up to 16 units at Village Commons. The sending parcel would then be transferred to the town as open space and would relinquish any future development rights of that parcel. So you have several matters in front of you. The first is the value of the security bond and the occupancy of the last unit. Second is the construction schedule and the completion of items at Village Commons. And the last is the density discussion of transferring the development density from Oak Street to this site at Gleason Street.
Question, Lisa, do you have any comments or questions? Okay. Farouk, do you want to comment?
Sorry, I didn't hear the whole thing.
What were the three, again, for him?
The first item was the project security bond, to make sure that we had adequate security for any outstanding items at the residential portion of the development. And Lisa Elaine, our town engineer, provided the security value based on the items that were being guaranteed for both the residential and the commercial component. And we have an overall security bond of $431,000. The estimated items in the residential portion total to $313,127.76. So there's a surplus of value in the residential portion of the project. In the commercial component, of course, that would also include the bond value that we have, the $431,000. But the value when you add in the commercial component, which is $454,000, would leave us short. But if you transfer the development from the Oak Street portion, you'd need a new security bond to cover the entire project.
But we would cover that once that public hearing is open and.
Correct.
Okay. So as far as we're concerned, the bond issue is on hold until he reopens that.
That's correct.
Okay.
But in consideration of the last residential unit there, the residential items to be completed are covered by the security bond that we have in place.
All right, so I don't think, unless you have a comment on that, Farouk, I think that's pretty cut and dried. But were there two other issues? You said you didn't hear everything?
I didn't really get an email from Lisa about any of the details of the bond. I thought I might get something on there. I know that when I updated my construction schedule, there's really not that many items left to finish. And the amount of money that's sitting there, $431,000, is by far exceeds what we would need to finish that. Now, I just wanted to make it clear, this bond was established for the entire project, both the residential and the commercial.
Right.
It was not just for the residential.
Right.
When Carl did that, it was based on everything. And I never asked for a bond reduction ever since that $431,000 was established.
So I think Lisa can probably summarize this better than I can, but, and maybe she can put it in an email to you as well, but what her conclusion is that the 430 is enough to cover the residential side of it. Only. But not the commercial side of it. So it's not enough to do both. So we're not, she's recommending that we don't reduce the bond, okay, but because it's enough to cover the residential, at this point, we're not going to ask for further bond. Okay, but when you come back in for, I assume you are moving forward with Brooke, I assume you are moving forward with the transfer of those residential units from Oak Street. Now, you have steps you have to take, and I know Jim has offered to help you with that, but the sooner you get that open, the sooner we can finalize what the bond's going to be for that, what conditions are going to be there. We've got to get that open so we can give you a commitment on something, right?
I was ready to get the marching orders from you.
Okay, well, you need to get an ad in the paper first and foremost. Okay.
We will do that this week.
Okay.
I already talked to Jim today, and I said I'll be contacting him to open up that.
I don't want to hold you up on this stuff, but there's things that I can't do for you, right? So you need to, Jim is willing to help you, but get the ad in the paper, get, your final design for that new building, right? You have to decide what you want to ask us for. I can't tell you what to ask us for, okay?
The board has had any thoughts on what option that they?
Well, I thought we made it clear last meeting that I would prefer to have all 18 units in one building. It would minimize, I feel like your lot coverage is going to be really tight if you start breaking out some townhouses and do an apartment-style building. So I would prefer to have 18 apartment. If you do go with 18, and if that's what you're asking us for, you have to remember 18 will incur an additional affordable unit, right? Yeah. So
that's what I offered.
Again, these are things you have to decide what you want to ask us for. I can't sit here and say you're going to get 18, right? Because we can't make that decision until we go through the process, right?
Now, in order for me to open up the hearing and have up the discussion, I'm taking this home from you at this point, saying that your board is leaning towards all the units in one building, correct?
Well, just wait a minute. The board has not made a decision on that, and.
We haven't made a decision on that, right? I'm just telling you my own personal preference, okay? You can come in and ask for, 15 in one building and 3 in 3 townhouses, and we'll have a discussion, and we may tell you that we're not good with that, you need to change it, right? But it should be done in the hearing.
In the public.
Because then we can,
I get it.
we'll notify the abutters, we'll,
No problem. I got it now.
we'll allow public comment, and then we'll actually be able to give you a commitment on stuff. Because right now, all we're giving you is kind of this is our feelings. We can't really make any
That's just fine.
binding
I just
decisions.
don't want, start spending money on laying them out unless I know exactly where I'm at. So I'm still
Well,
gonna come
yeah,
up
but
with the same.
I mean, one of the things, Farouk, which I think I said to you last time, is I'd like to see some creativity. I don't want to see a block apartment building sitting out there. I'm really concerned about that, taking the easy route on this and just putting up an apartment building.
Yeah, keep in
That's
mind, the
not what I
design
want.
is going to be, it's going to have to get through the design review. So you're going to have to hire an architect that actually puts together a nice looking building and not just,
Or a
That decision will come out of the board in
combination,
public
yeah.
hearing.
Yeah, as I said, I really want to see some creativity when you're looking at something and not just take the easy way out on this. I mean, I've been out to that site 1,000 times, and I drive by it quite often. And I'm looking at the height of the buildings that are there and that have been built. I mean, for example, the individual units you have there. And I just don't want to see some sort of a block sitting there in the middle, which is just not going to be compatible visually to the rest of that particular development. Because I think the original development, when it was done with some thought about making it visually attractive. And I think you really need to think about that.
well, yes, but keep in
Bring
mind
us some
that
plans.
two additional commercial buildings might be even less attractive than what he's.
Well, it
committed.
depends.
So-
I mean, you know,
So we have
as I
to,
said, right.
I mean, there's a balance there.
Yeah, but
And
now
I-
we've got an opportunity maybe to make it an attractive site and not, if we're not going to have the commercial building.
But I agree with you.
That's what I'm saying.
You need to produce something that's going to be appealing and attractive to the butters, because they're going to be notified on this, to the design review board and to this board.
Through the chairman, the next time when we come in front of you would be in the form of a public hearing, right? Because we would have opened up that public hearing. I'll still be presenting the same 2 options in that. And then a decision will come out of the board as to what direction we're going. Once that is done, then I have to approach my bank to make sure that they are willing to release Hannah so that carryout is still there.
Right.
I've talked to them initially, but they said, we need to know for sure, and I can't tell them for sure until you are sure.
Yeah.
So next meeting, once, I get the flavor of where you're going. then I can
Hang on,
talk.
let me ask, is there enough time to post it so that it can be on the next meeting's agenda?
It's possible. We'll see
Okay.
what happens
All
tomorrow.
right, so I'm putting it on the next meeting agenda, and we will, but you need to actually have some kind of site plan put together, at least a good concept plan. I mean, what else would he need?
So if we are able to make a newspaper advertising by tomorrow afternoon, you would need to be able to deliver plans to me when the ad hits the paper. If it goes to the paper tomorrow afternoon, it would appear in the paper on Saturday. So I would need something from you by the latest, the close of business on Friday. Even though no one comes to the office on Saturday and Sunday, it needs to be there first thing on Monday. So if it hits the paper on Saturday, if someone walks in the office Monday, they have to be able to see it.
Now, let me ask you this, though. Could it be the site plan that he's already produced?
Yes, it can.
And then it can be changed later if you don't?
Yes, it can. It
like-
doesn't have to be a design review plan. It only needs to be something very similar to this that he delivered us last meeting.
Okay, so you could deliver that, and then we could change it during this public hearing process if our discussion decides that, you should go in a different direction.
Well, I think one of
Is
the
it
things
okay to
that,
talk to you tomorrow? a little bit more?
Yes, please.
Hazel,
Okay, thank you. I'm all set.
one second. Hazel, did you have a question?
yeah, I did. I think we haven't even really come to a decision about how many units this is going to be.
Correct.
So, you know.
We can't do any of that
that's
until
what I
the
mean,
public
we're up
hearing.
in
We
there.
need
So
to get into the
essentially,
public hearing.
Ferg is going to present us a plan with X number of units, and then we will make some decisions on whether that's the appropriate amount of units for the particular space and use thereof.
Yeah, in the ad, I would need to note that there would be an amount not to exceed 18 units. Doesn't mean it's a total of 18 units, it could be 16. But in the ad, I need to give people notice that it's a multifamily development at a transit-oriented village, proposal for not more than 18 units.
Okay, so you can help him word the ad and get it in the paper, but I agree.
That's what people want.
Okay.
Goal 50.
Was there any other open issues?
I want to go back to the construction schedule when you're
Yeah,
done talking about
can I just ask a question? If we look at the plan for option number 1, it's showing a building with 18 units and then 3 townhouses in addition. So that's more than 18 units.
That's 15.
Is that a?
I think it says 15.
Sorry.
And 3.
It's so much.
15 and 3. It's hard to read. It
We'll
is.
get better copies of that when the public hearing is. The construction schedule, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. So the board should have your copy of Farouk's submission on the construction schedule. And then if you have your copy of Lisa's bond estimate. Generally, the construction schedule reflects the items on the bond estimate. So you have line items to be completed that are secured by your security bond. It would be appropriate that Farouk would address each one of those items, as opposed to summarizing these in groups of items. Because to say something is complete, when in our eyes, maybe myself and the town engineer, it's only partially complete, is not an adequate characterization of where the project stands. However, if you look at the bond items, it's very specific of what is to be installed. And it's quantifiable whether or not it's complete. I would prefer that the construction schedule reflect the bond schedule. That's the only way that we can really know if an item is complete.
Okay, Farouk, do you understand that? Can you take a look at that bond schedule that you obviously,
The one that she prepared.
right, and try
I
and give
just
us,
got it now, he just delivered that to me, I'll look at it.
okay, can you try and produce something that's a little more specific than what you gave us last night?
Okay.
Along the lines of that schedule? And keep in mind that we're going to ask you for the same thing once you come in for that special permit amendment.
Okay.
Because we're going to want details as to, what your expectations are on completion of all of these items, including any changes to that special permit.
Yeah, no problem. I'm very convinced that the bond is more than promised.
John?
Can I suggest, and maybe this is obvious, can Lisa send the Excel file to Farouk so that he can just edit this and, make a new column that says status?
Yep,
Like,
should be
it's the
simple.
easiest way to do it.
Should be simple, yep. Yeah,
Farouk, are you good with that?
I'm looking, I just got it now, so.
No, I'm just saying for the update that Jim and we are asking for is just update
All right,
this.
so Lisa's going to send you that file so you can go through and make your comments on that.
I'll make
okay?
comments.
And just comment on each one, all right?
Okay.
As far as the COs, that is, go ahead.
That's it. I'd like you to tell me what to do so that I can either sign it tomorrow or not sign it tomorrow.
Okay, well, I think at this point you should sign it. That's my feeling. I feel like we've, I feel like we've got to a point where we can't go much further until the special permit hearing, and I'm not going to hold up the COs on the first half of the project. That's my feeling.
Right.
Anyone else?
Does that mean this resident will get his house? Yes, and I support that.
Or if we do that,
We have enough in the bond to cover the residential
In other words, if we issue it, we essentially have lost any leverage we have. Is that correct, Jim?
Say again?
If we if you sign off on the CO on that final unit, essentially, we lose any leverage we have except for the bond.
Correct. And again, just to refresh your memories, the way that this type of security bond works, because it's issued by an insurance company, is if we were to determine that Farouk is in fault, or rather default, of his construction schedule, the board would need to hold a public hearing and find specifically where Farouk is in default, then vote to access the security bond to complete the project, and then contact the insurance company, putting them on notice. The insurance company is going to respond to you by saying, that's great, you do the work and we'll reimburse you. That's the way insurance bonds work. This is not like a cash bond. This is not like a tri-party agreement with a bank that's a lender that would complete the work. The town must complete the work, which means I have to go to town meeting and ask for the money and tell them they'll get reimbursed. So it's not a good position to be in, but there's more money here than the value of the items to be completed. I would think it would be dumb if Farouk were to walk away from this. It's obviously his decision, but it would affect his ability to get financing on a future project, that's for sure.
Is there any way that we can put a time limit on the completion of these? I mean, what concerns me is that this has been going on and on and on and on. And I'm not convinced that 2 years down the road here, we're going to be sitting in exactly the same position. That fine, we have the surety bond, but the work has not been completed.
And then, back off of that, this construction schedule has been updated numerous times, and it's not even a construction schedule. But when do you say enough's enough and find them in default?
So technically, he's already beyond the completion date of his schedule, and you could find him in default tonight. But I think you're very close to getting this done. You could, for example, condition your vote to give the final occupancy permit upon Farouk completing all the items in the bond estimate schedule by a date certain. You might pick June 30th of next year, or some date, putting Farouk on notice that if he isn't complete, or if the board hasn't given him yet a further extension in the interim, he must be complete by whatever date you pick.
And we can do that even with you signing off on the CO tonight for that final unit.
Yeah, because you're going to tell me to sign off conditional on the following.
All right, I think there's got to be some conditions on this.
My question on that is how, I mean, if he's not compliant with that, then you're going to withdraw the CO?
No.
Yeah, so it would just be that we would cash in on the bond.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I don't really see personally, I don't necessarily see the point. I mean, we could tell Farouk right now, get it complete by June 30th of next year, or we're going to hold a hearing and cash in on the bond. And you can condition the approval, but it's doing the same thing.
Yeah, but I'd like to see something in writing on this. I guess it would make me feel more comfortable if I saw something in writing. And so somebody can't come back and say, I mean, I think we also in some ways represent the people that are living there, that, you know, it's our responsibility as a planning board to make sure that this development is finished the way it's supposed to be finished.
Right.
And that concerns me a little bit, because I think that it's important to get that done. And so, though the condition, as you said, if we put it on, is not, doesn't make that much difference, because we could go in June and, you know, ask for a forfeit of the bond at that point. But at least I would like to have us as a planning board show that we're making a good faith effort to try to get.
I don't really
this
understand
project
tying it to
completed.
the CFO, though. I mean,
I'm
we're
not saying-
we're not going to relinquish the you know, not going to retract an occupancy.
Well, no, you can't.
I'm sorry, I
but
interrupted
yeah.
you too, but my feeling is we have enough to cover the residential. We should issue the COs, and we should come up with a deadline for Farouk to finish the rest of it. Now, that deadline might change based upon what happens in the special permit hearing if it gets reopened. It hasn't been even advertised yet, so for now, we can discuss a date where if you don't have the rest of the items in Lisa's list done by, what's a realistic date at this point? I have, none of us have seen that list from Lisa. What's a realistic?
Personally, I think it makes sense to do it just before the warrant closes on town meeting, because you can say June 30th, you have to have it done, but then if it doesn't get done and we can't get funding at town meeting until next March, then there's over 6 months that we're just going to be sitting there twiddling our thumbs. Where he could be doing the work in between, and he may not feel compelled to do that work. So I think you want to do it a month before the warrant closes for town meeting, so you can add the work.
There's a fall town meeting. We're not going to close it, and we're not going to tell them to have it done by February.
No, I'm not saying
That's
23, I'm saying 24.
Well, there's a fall town meeting in 23.
Right, so you
I
can
think
do
we
it the
should-
month before.
I think we should set a deadline of August 31st.
July
And that-
30th.
Okay.
I'm saying I don't think you want too much time in between town meeting and that vote.
Right,
That's-
right.
Well, August 31st would give it 2 months before town meeting. All right,
I would set it for June because, quite frankly, with the delays we've had, so forth, I can see something coming up that's getting delayed. And
Sure.
so I'd rather have some extra time in between.
All right.
I am definitely not opposed to issuing the CO. I think that needs to be done. I agree with that. But I think setting a date like June 30th to get the completion
June
done.
30th works.
And that's, I don't want
Makes
to, I don't want to beat a dead horse on this
Yeah.
one. I just don't understand why setting an earlier date to get it complete.
Well, because quite frankly, the way things have worked around here is that on June 20th, he's going to, or on August 1st, he's going to come in and say, I couldn't get the materials, I won't be able to be finished by that time. I want enough lead time in between where there's plenty of time where you really will be able to
Yeah,
finish
but
this.
you're not understanding what we're doing tonight. We're setting a hard deadline.
Yeah, right.
We're not going to move that deadline.
So
So he
I'm
needs to
saying-
understand tonight that if we set a deadline of June 30th or August 31st or whatever, if it's not done, we're going to town meeting next fall and we're going to ask for money to finish it. And call his bond.
I'm just thinking if you set it for June 30th and say it's a, very snowy, wet winter and people can't get into the ground until May, just for an example. He's got 2 months to do work. And then if we say June 30th is his deadline, and if you don't have it done by June 30th, we're going to go to town meeting. Town meeting's not until September. Now you've got July and August where he's not going to do any work because he already knows that he's going to lose the bond. And we can't do anything. So if we make it August 31st,
Yeah.
he has the chance to do work July and August to get it done before we have to go to town meeting.
Because we're not going to be able to, we're not going to hold a special town meeting to call him a bond.
No, no,
right?
no.
So we just need to know that it's done by August 30th because that gives us enough time to put it on the warrant.
And Jim, is that going to be enough time to get on the warrant then?
Yes. But, so I'm trying to write you a motion now that would reflect the construction schedule and your desire to have these items completed, and putting them on notice, putting the developer on notice that you will secure his bond. The reason that I'm doing this is because you want to show in your minutes that this item has been addressed on the record for the public, that you know that he's behind on his construction schedule, and the covenant that you have with the developer attached a construction schedule, which he is now behind 2 years plus, and showing that you're patient. Therefore, you're going to give him a deadline, that if he is not complete by a date certain, you intend to act on the security bond.
Right, and let me just ask you though, if he comes back in and revises the special permit, we're going to set
A new bond, and
we're gonna set a whole new
this will no
deadline on all
longer
of this,
matter.
right? I mean, he's obviously not
Well,
going to have this.
no, not necessarily, because I think we have to look at this, even if he comes in to do the new section, a lot of these things should have been done with the original
No, I get
development.
that, but we're going to
Yeah.
revisit all these deadlines.
Right, but as I said, I think the project can be divided out in certain ways, because so many of these things,
Completely agree with you.
Okay, all right.
You know, if he comes in on, and revises the special permit, and we say, well, yeah, we'll do the special permit, but we want pick an item, the dumpster pad and screening done before we approve.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Put that
just-
as a condition.
Yeah, as I said, I just want to make sure that we're aware and that everyone's aware that we are trying to get the original project finished.
So I
But
think,
Before
what we
we
might
move on
not
to the
do
next
is,
one.
what we might not do is require, I don't know, we're
Yeah.
talking about things that we're going to talk
Yeah.
about in the special permits.
I think what Mark is saying is if we reopen the special permit, you can condition that approval on getting all this stuff done before he gets a building permit for the next stuff.
Well, I don't want to say all of it.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying. you
Some of
can-
it might make
Right,
sense
so
to
there-
wait
No,
until
Exactly.
he's
I
done
understand,
with
I'm
the
just
next
saying, you can
build.
condition the approval on the
That's-
new stuff for the old stuff to be done.
Yeah, that's
before
fine.
anything
I just,
happens.
as I said, I just want to get
Yeah.
clear in my mind that the original stuff gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other advantage is we're going to discuss a new bond in that. And, you know, that's something that we're going to have to all agree on before he gets any kind of amendment to that special permit.
I'd like to ask Lisa what it would take if you were to try to do the commercial portion of this project. How far off are we on the bond? No, let's say the special permit project that Farouk brings in front of us next meeting, let's say if that doesn't go through, hypothetically, and we're just focused on this original project. If he defaults on the original project, and there's still the front commercial portion, what do we need to cover that portion of the development? Yes.
Right.
Right. Have to do he only, yeah, he doesn't have to do the two additional commercial spaces.
Does this bond estimate include Davis-Bacon wages? So the bond, I'm assuming this is all the hard costs, right? For the materials and stuff? Does it include labor? Labor? But if we were to bid this out as a town, wouldn't we have to pay Davis-Bacon wages so they would be higher? Right, that's what this reflects? Okay.
Well, I think there's no question we're going to be careful no matter where it's built. If it's built at Oak Street or on Gleason Street, we're certainly going to have some
Discussion.
some stronger language, let's put it that way. And some definitive deadlines on stuff. Right? But again, I feel like we're getting, a lot of this is going to be covered under this, when he reopens the special permit. And if he doesn't reopen the special permit, then we're going to cover it under Oak Street. But would we inherit the rights to the commercial? How would that work? Like, could the town then say to another developer, well, go in and build that now?
That's up to you.
It's a,
Yeah, you could amend the special permit and determine that. So, for example, you decide to not finish the commercial elements. And you decide that in the future, any redevelopment, completion, addition to the commercial component require a modification of the existing special permit, and you let it sit.
If somebody did decide to build it to commercial.
Right.
I mean, my feeling is it doesn't make sense to do the
Or you could take the remaining balance and finish particular components of the commercial. It'd be up to
commercial.
you.
Sure, like pedestrian walkway, things like that. Yeah, okay. All right, so do you have more questions?
I do. So this, what he has left to do, I mean, obviously should have already been done. What can get done right away versus what needs to get done in the spring because of weather?
Well, he's got the dumpster pad and screening by November 30th. He's got the garden and play area by November 30th. Site lighting, I think could be done as soon as it's approved by the design review board.
Site lighting now.
There are no interior streetlights or common space lighting in place currently, none.
So that seems like a hazard.
Could be.
And he hasn't finished the meeting room thing, whatever it is.
You mean the summer house?
Right,
Yes.
that's not finished, is that correct? And it.
I don't believe you have an occupancy there.
That's the one that has a bathroom, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. That isn't even, has that been built yet?
Well, can we give him a deadline?
It is
on-
complete, it's just not finished. I mean, it is built, it's just not finished.
Well, let me ask you this. We have a town meeting come up in the spring. Can we condition that certain items be done by February 1st? Or we'll call in the bond then?
You could, I wouldn't advise that. Weather can mess things up.
What's that?
Is the plumbing connected?
So you're talking about the actual summer house getting everything is far.
Right, but has the plumbing to it been completed? So the plumbing to the building is
Right.
in place? Right, and I know, yeah, I understand what you're saying, yeah.
So, all right,
So,
again, John, I feel like we're going to run around and around. I feel like we should just set a hard date, August 30th of next year. If it's not done by then, we pull the bond. But in the meantime, he's going to come back in, reopen the special permit, and we're going to have a whole nother discussion on all of these deadlines then.
I'm more inclined to lean towards him getting done what needs to get done by the end of the year than giving him an extension till August, because he hasn't gone with his own construction timeline. Why are we giving favors out when there's been nothing in return?
I mean, it's not really a favor. If we call in the bond, then the town is gonna have to get the money and basically do the work, hire out the work. So it's more effort from the town when the contractor or the developer can do it. We're not gonna get it done. If the town gets some money and we have to bid it out, we have to get the work done, it's not gonna get done until August. So if he's already mobilized and he's paying for it.
To be honest with you, John, even if we set a deadline of February 28th, that's not enough time, right? Even if we set a deadline of February 1st to do some of these items, if he comes back in and reopens a special permit, we're going to have a whole new construction schedule, we're going to have a whole new bond, it's all going to be revisited then, and we can condition
That would
the
happen next
permit
meeting.
on, yeah. So, I mean, I feel like we're just,
No, I mean, I think it's, what we're having, it's a worthwhile conversation because
no, I understand exactly what you're saying, because I don't want everything waiting till August 25th to get done, right? Like because then, there's a much higher probability that we'll have to enforce that deadline, right?
I mean, I think it's fair to say we wouldn't be having this conversation if there wasn't issues of trust that we're having now.
Right,
So,
right. And there's a track record of, well, I couldn't get it done for whatever reason, and so now I need more time. And I don't want it to come down to August. I mean, I think even if we set an August deadline and nothing goes forward, we have to be on him on that. We have to monitor his progress on all of these, because I don't want to get caught on August 1st saying you've got to do 3 months worth of work in 2 weeks.
Can I make a suggestion? If I look at Farouk's construction schedule here, most of his items, particularly the paving, are to be completed by June 30th of next year, June 30th of 23. The striping by July 30th, that could easily be moved to June. That's really the outer date for his items. Final paving, sidewalk completion, June 30th of 23. If you extend that date into August, I don't have time, or no one's going to have time to advertise for a public hearing to get the bond before a special town meeting that's going to occur in October. You don't have enough time. You should drop back to June. That way, if it's not completed by June, we have months to access the bond before going to town meeting. That's the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we need to know what date you think is best in order to get it.
August is way too tight for an October town meeting.
May.
Yeah, we did.
I'm saying June 30th, and the reason that I'm saying June 30th is it's a fiscal year for us.
Okay, so,
I've written a motion if you just want to hear it.
sure.
So, I can read this again and make sure Kristen can read it before you guys vote it. So, regarding Village Commons at 1 Gleason Street, the planning board finds the following. Whereas the board has been patient in waiting for items guaranteed by the project security bond to be completed, despite the developer continuing falling behind project construction schedule, and whereas the developer is now more than 2 years behind the original completion date cited in the project covenant and the security bond schedule, therefore the planning board proposes the following. I move that the board require all items in the Village Commons TOV bond estimate November 2022 be completed by June 30th, 2023, unless otherwise extended by the planning board. Otherwise, the planning board will take necessary steps to secure the project bond. And I wrote in in that motion, unless otherwise extended by the planning board, because if you approve a special permit in the interim to this action, it may change that schedule. And so therefore, by your own action, you will have decided to not act on this.
The last,
The motion?
the last sentence of the motion.
Yes. So I move that the planning board require all items in the Village Commons TOV bond estimate November 2022 be completed by June 30th, 2023, unless otherwise extended by the planning board. Otherwise, the planning board will take necessary steps to secure the security bond.
Need to add and complete the work or not? I mean, is that?
No,
By
I
taking
don't.
the bond,
I don't think
I
so.
mean, you can't take a bond, I mean, you have to complete the work. I mean, I just want to make sure that the language is such that it's clear that. the
Could say,
bond
I could add to
gets-
complete outstanding items.
Yeah,
Sure.
back and let's, worst case scenario, we have to call on the bond and inflation continues. And the cost of the project is more than what the bond is. I mean, we price it out what it is today, but it could be more in the future. Do we have any? Inflation's gone up more than that.
So it's like a 25% contingency.
15%.
15. So my
No, I
concern
mean,
is like, is there any recourse?
No, but
To
that
get more
430 is over
if the
100,000 more
project
than it would take to
costs more
complete
to
the
finish?
residential. So that's a pretty big
You think, okay, I just want to make sure, that's my concern.
That's what I'm saying, we have 25% plus a contingency. So,
Okay, it's okay,
so we would be able to access the whole 430 if the costs went up to, say, instead of 330, let's say they went up to 390.
Right.
yeah, I don't, commercials,
knows.
whatever, I just
If they
want to
went
make
up to
sure.
390,
Yeah.
we would be able to still use the 430. We just wouldn't be able to use the $40,000. Yeah, we're gonna have a separate vote to instruct Jim to sign off on those COs.
It's just one.
I thought it was just the one
I'm
vote.
sorry,
just
that
the
one
one.
CO.
Well, isn't the vote for the CO and then conditioning it on the bond?
No, we're not conditioning the CO.
What's the motion for?
Motion is purely to
complete
serve
the
notice to
project.
the developer that he has a deadline. We're gonna do a separate, I don't wanna,
guess you can't-
I thought we said we weren't gonna condition the CO on anything.
I guess you can't really condition it though.
I
Because
think
once you
we,
give it, you give it.
Once you've given it, you've given it.
well, first of all, I would, why don't we just do is simply, I would make a motion to instruct, to have Jim sign off on the final certificate.
I don't think we need a motion on that, do we?
I don't know, I think Jim wants us,
Well,
wants
you had
a,
it, you were holding it at the last meeting. There's got to be some reason to, I think the board should vote to
Well,
Let's
isn't it,
give the
but
notice
it's
first.
based on the fact, in other words, the agreement that we, or the agreement that we should issue that last CO is really based on the fact that we have sufficient surety to complete those things in the project. So I think we could do a motion saying, based on the fact that we, it's determined that we have sufficient security for completion of.
well, that's
the-
exactly what, at the last meeting, we wanted to wait for Lisa to do, to
Right.
tell us how much it would cost to finish. We have that, so now I'm making a motion to tell Jim to sign the last CO.
Yes, but the motion is based on the fact that we've now determined that we have sufficient security. to
But that's
complete.
not, that doesn't have to be in the
I
motion.
think it does have to be in the motion, because I think that's the reason we are allowing
But the whole,
CO to
okay,
be.
fine, I will revise the motion. After consultation with town engineer on the cost to complete the project, the remaining outstanding items at Village Commons, I move that, and finding that there is sufficient financial surety to complete the town's portion of the residential outstanding items, I move that the town planner sign the certificate of occupancy on the final residential unit. My first motion was much easier.
Well, I just wanted to make it clear.
No,
why
I
we're
understand your
doing
point, and I'm fine
I
with
would make
it.
it clear with
A
this.
second.
Okay. We have a motion and we have a second. Do we discuss it, read it back? I mean, it was,
Are we gonna also read in the notice?
well, that's going to be
That's what
our
we
next motion.
Okay, I just wanna make
Jim-
sure.
That Jim drafted. Yeah. And I think Jim's draft was better than my draft, so.
Okay, I just want to make
I
sure.
should have let him draft this one too. But we have a motion and a second. Do you want to have Kristen read it
Kristen's
back?
got it.
Yeah. You guys want to hear it again? Because I can't say it again.
It's fine. It's on record, it's fine.
All right. Any further discussion of the
Clean it
motion?
up for the minutes.
All right. All those in favor? That's 4-0 to sign the CO. Okay?
There's a smiling guy right there.
You're welcome. All right.
Welcome home.
Now, John, you're closest. Do you want to make the motion that pass it down or?
I can't read this. I'm a little confused as to what this is. I mean, is this a resolution the planning board is making? Like,
Yes.
what-
It's us giving him notice that we've had enough of.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I get what it is. It's
Yeah.
just, the process is confusing me.
So you're
But yes, I will-
you're making a finding and you're proposing an action in the future so that if anyone says, well, you didn't give the developer enough notice what your intention was, you're formally doing that because the person that might say that or the entity that might say that is the bond company. They'll say, what did you do for my client? Did you put him on notice? How did you put him on notice? Did you make any findings? So
That's why everything-
this is an attempt
We
to
could send them
make
3
the
years
findings.
worth of minutes and.
Put him on notice.
They would know how much notice he's had.
So I'm going to read the whole thing again, but Hazel, I add some language at the end so you listen then. Regarding Village Commons at 1 Gleason Street, the planning board finds the following. Whereas the planning board has been patient in waiting for items guaranteed by the project security bond to be completed, despite the developer continually falling behind the project construction schedule, and whereas the developer is now more than 2 years behind the original completion date cited in the project covenant and security bond schedule, therefore the planning board proposes the following motion. I move that the planning board require all items in the Village Commons TOV bond estimate November 2022 be completed by June 30, 2023, unless otherwise extended by the planning board. Otherwise, the planning board will take necessary steps towards securing the project security bond to complete remaining items incomplete in the project completion schedule identified in the aforementioned bond estimate.
Second that.
Well, you have to actually make the
Okay,
motion.
I will make the motion as set forth.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Do you have any comments before? Okay,
I just want to make a comment.
yeah.
This bond will never be forfeited. I can tell you that.
Okay, that's
Never.
that's exactly
Because
what we're
it's 10
hoping,
times
right?
more
Like,
money.
nobody wants to take the bond for it. All
I
right,
just want the board,
all right.
I hope you
happy
do the
about
work.
it.
We have a
I'll
motion.
see
we-
to it that it gets done.
Good.
And forfeiture is not even in the cards.
Okay.
Great.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's 4-0, okay. So we'll see you at the next meeting. Get that ad out so that we can,
Okay, we will do the edge. Okay.
all right.
Can I move to approve the minutes of October 25th?
I thought we did that last time. Did we approve the minutes of October 25th? Okay, as corrected. Okay, go ahead.
You can and you just did.
I just
Yeah,
did.
Okay,
I'll
I'll
second it. Okay.
So we have a motion, we have a second on minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's 4-0. Any other business, Jim?
Yes, so the town manager informed me earlier this evening that the special town meeting to consider 5 items on a special town meeting warrant will be held Saturday, December 10th at 9 a.m.
5 items?
5 items.
Okay.
Is one of them the library?
Yes, the library and the one that affects us, we have to hold another public hearing for the dimensional schedule, and that hearing will be at our next meeting, December 6th. The language will be identical to what we had in the last warrant, but we have to go through the motions necessary for this town meeting. So again, that's Saturday, December 10, 9 a.m. at the high school. Hopefully it'll be a quick meeting, we'll be out of there before noon.
There's 5 items. Like, there's no way that library thing is going to be quick. That's going to be,
No, I gave you 3 hours.
it's going to be Interesting. I mean, at some point, the moderators, somebody's going to move the question probably, because, all right, well, anyway, so I got to put 9 o'clock on the 10th. What else, Jim? Anything?
Your next meeting is going to be very busy because the two items you continue tonight will be back on the warrant, plus a public hearing for Village Commons, plus a public hearing for the zoning item. And I'm not sure if the public hearing for the earth moving permit at 25 Gleason will be ready. You've continued them through the month of December, but they could come back at any
And Flanders, 165 Flanders, right?
They're on December 20th.
Oh, they are. Okay, I thought they were on the, all right, good.
Move that we adjourn?
Second.
Any discussion, all those in favor? That's 4-0 in favor.